In the heart of Rome stands a testament to the early days of Christianity, a basilica named after a figure shrouded in history and legend, St. Clement. Today, let's unravel the story of this enigmatic figure, exploring his life, works, and the legacy he left behind. St. Clement of Rome was a Gentile and a Roman. He is one of the earliest popes about which we know anything definite. His exact position in the papal lineage is debated, with some placing him as the fourth pope, while others argue for the third or for the fifth. One thing that we know for certain is that he played a crucial role in shaping the early church. According to Origen, another one of our church fathers, this Clement of Rome is the same as the Clement in Philippians 4:3, who is one of Paul's companions. He is known as the first apostolic father, although we only have one of his works. It's likely that St. Clement lived through the tumultuous Neronian persecutions from 64 to 68 AD, eventually meeting his end at the hands of Emperor Trajan, although this is according to tradition and we don't have much corroborating evidence. Another one of our church fathers, Irenaeus, makes mention of him when he is writing about the apostolic succession of the church at Rome. In his book Against Heresies, he writes, "The blessed apostles, then having founded and built up the church, committed into the hands of Linus the office of the episcopate. Of this Linus, Paul makes mention in the epistles to Timothy. To him succeeded Anacletus, and after him in the third place from the apostles, Clement was allotted the bishopric. This man, as he had seen the blessed apostles, and had been conversant with them, might be said to have the preaching of the apostles still echoing in his ears, and their traditions before his eyes." Clement was likely a co-presbyter of Rome alongside Linus and Cletus, who preceded him as popes. Because he lived through the persecutions of Nero in 64 to 68 AD, most hypothesize that it was during these persecutions that Linus and Cletus met their fate, and Clement, being a natural successor to Paul in his ministry, rose to the title of pope. St. Clement of Rome has often been confused with Titus Flavius Clemens due to their similar names and the fact that Titus Flavius Clemens was martyred for religious beliefs that largely remain unknown to us. It's alleged that he was an atheist, but over time he became known as a Christian martyr. The testimonies of the church fathers do not align with the life of Titus Flavius Clemens, and thus this remains a minority opinion. While much is still debated about Clement, his life, his death, who came after him, who came before him as pope, what we do know is that he had a tremendous effect on the church and establishing the tradition that still lives on. We see Clement's theological prowess shining through in his sole surviving work, the Epistle to the Corinthians. Within its verses, we find echoes of early Christian doctrine, a fervent call to unity amidst sectarian strife, and echoes of Paul's original epistle to the Corinthians as well. When Clement wrote to the Corinthians, he wrote about the same problem that Paul had to write to them about: unity in the church. Because of this, he didn't discuss much doctrine. What doctrine he did discuss was simply echoes of Paul's doctrine from his epistle to the Corinthians. In this epistle, there are a total of 315 parallel passages and quotes of Scripture. 157 of them are from the Old Testament and the Apocryphal books, and 158 are from the New Testament. Of these, only 3 are strict quotes from the New Testament. He quotes from Matthew, Luke, and Titus. But he does mention one book by name, which is, as one would expect, Paul's letter to the Corinthians. I'll now quote from his epistle regarding the purpose. "Every kind of honor and happiness was bestowed upon you, and then was fulfilled that which is written. My beloved did eat and drink, and was enlarged, and became fat, and kicked. Hence flowed emulation and envy, strife and sedition, persecution and disorder, war and captivity. So the worthless rose up against the honored, and those of no reputation against such as were renowned, the foolish against the wise, the young against those advanced in years. For this reason, righteousness and peace are now far departed from you, inasmuch as everyone abandons the fear of God and has become blind in his faith, neither walks in the ordinances of his appointment, nor acts a part becoming a Christian, but walks after his own wicked lusts, resuming the practice of an unrighteous and ungodly envy, by which death itself entered the world. You may see this first letter referred to as the first epistle of Clement to the Corinthians. The reason is because for a long time, there was a second document considered to be his second epistle to the Corinthians. Most regard this as a forgery, however, because it's written less like a letter and more like a homily, as well as it's inconsistent with his doctrine and with his style of writing. Even just a few hundred years after his death, there's already rejection of this letter. Eusebius writes in his ecclesiastical history, but it must also be observed that there is said to be a second epistle of Clement, but we do not know that this is recognized like the former, for we do not find that the ancients have made any use of it. So how do we come by his works? Well, our earliest edition is in the Codex Alexandrinus, which was written in the early 5th century. It includes both 1st and 2nd Clement, although it is missing parts of 1st Clement that were filled in later with 2 other manuscripts that we found. Being the first pope about which we know anything real and definite, there are relics and stories attributed to him that may or may not be based on real events and facts. Philip Schaff, in his History of the Christian Church, says of these, later legends have decked out his life and romance, both in the interest of the Catholic Church and in that of heresy. They picture him as a noble and highly educated Roman who, dissatisfied with the wisdom and art of heathenism, journeyed to Palestine, became acquainted there with the Apostle Peter, and was converted by him, accompanied him on his missionary tours, composed many books in his name, was appointed by him his successor as Bishop of Rome, with a sort of supervision over the whole church, and, at last, being banished under Trajan to the Taurian Chersonesus, died the glorious death of a martyr in the waves of the sea. But the oldest witnesses, down to Eusebius and Jerome, know nothing of his martyrdom. The Acta Martyri Clementis by Simon Metaphrastus make their appearance first in the 9th century. They are purely fictitious and ascribe incredible miracles to their hero. Today, the Basilica of St. Clement stands as a majestic symbol of reverence and devotion, a tangible link to the storied past of Christianity. Nestled amidst the bustling streets of Rome, this sacred sanctuary transcends mere stone and mortar, embodying the enduring legacy of its namesake saint. With each weathered brick and intricately carved pillar, the basilica bears witness to centuries of faith, perseverance, and spiritual pilgrimage. Its very foundation, dating back 1,600 years, laid upon the hallowed ground that was once tread by St. Clement himself, serves as a testament to the enduring presence of God's grace in the hearts of believers and the foundational role that he played as the first church father.